PTF here to say that today's show is brought to you in part by our friends at America's Best Racing. You can take part in the 2021 Fan Choice Awards this November with the winners of 11 categories decided by horse racing fans. Don't miss the chance to voice your opinion about the sport you love. Voters will also be automatically registered to win a $1,000 Amazon gift card. New for 2021, the fans get to handpick the finalists for 4 Fan Choice Award categories. Last week, it was Best Racetrack Food. This week, it's Favorite Small or Mid-Circuit Racetrack. A little bit later on in the month, Favorite TV Personality. And then, of course, the one we're the most excited about. See if we can defend our title with the Favorite Podcast/Radio Show. Help America's Best Racing determine the finalists for the Favorite Small and Mid-Circuit Racetrack. The voting ends on August 15th. For more information, check out americasbestracing.net. Hello and welcome to the In the Money Players podcast. This is our show being recorded on Tuesday, August 10th. We're actually going to be doing handicapping. Don't always do handicapping on the early week show, but that dynamic changes when you're dealing with a pick six carryover in the $1 Saratoga pick six, especially. Always kind of nice when you get the extra days off in between to prep for a pick six carryover, and that's what we have today. I'm in a host mode today. I'll be honest. I've been running around. There's been activity at the sales and probably staying up too late. I'm not going to give you my tired brain thoughts, except a couple as they float across the brain. But we got a couple heavy hitters in for you. 2 people whose opinions I always want to hear whenever I'm betting on the New York circuit or really anywhere they're looking at. We'll start off with a man who you can read regularly over at inthemoneypodcast.com doing his daily analysis of Saratoga. Nick Tamaro, how are things?
Good morning, Pete. I'm doing great. Good to be with you. I suppose it's morning where I am, but afternoon where you are. So great to be with you.
We'll allow that. We'll allow that we'll allow the good morning in off the goalpost. Another man in the Eastern time zone. He is a frequent guest on these airwaves and has led to listeners hitting many multiple race bets, including pick sixes along the way. You can see his work over at In the Money Plus. He's Matt Vagvolgi. Matt, what's up?
Doing great, Pete. Doing great. I would say I'm always excited to be on these airwaves. I'm a little less excited for the premise today, considering this carryover came out of my pocket in the last strides. But you know what? I'm not bitter, right? I'm not bitter. I'm not complaining, right? You know, it's onward and upward.
That's amazing. What were you sitting on Sunday?
Well, let me put it to you this way. My lowest payout was 62,000. My highest payout was the whole pool. I had 5 horses, 2 of them on the lead, and getting caught late with a horse that figured. But again, it's the pick six. You gotta cut bait somewhere. But when you have an A at 36-1, you know, a single in the first leg at 5-1, you just, you know, in the long term, you got to cash those. You know, it's kind of funny. I was talking to Jason Beam about this recently. It's like, you know, old age gets you over those, but when it's to that level, they're hard to get over. So a bit frustrating. The patio furniture did not end up in the backyard like in my brain that it was going to. And I kept my emotions and you know what? It's a carryover. We'll move on.
That was some good forbearance. I mean, there are stories, remember when doing 6 Secrets of Successful Bettors, of biggest scores of lifetimes coming out of frustrating pick six results that should have gone in the pocket that went to carryover. Maybe that model will repeat itself for you. You know, as someone who constructs multiple tickets, the horse that won the finale on Sunday, was this a horse you had on some tickets, not ones that were yet alive, or had you taken a stand against?
I did. I had that horse on one ticket that it's funny. Actually, I cashed a couple 5 out of 6s. So it wasn't bad. Paid like $1,200 for the 5 out of 6. But my key horses were the ones I was alive to. And, you know, it was further on down the list. Like I said, the horse fit, needed to step up and run a big race. And that's exactly what the horse did. And unfortunately, we'll reference on today's pick six.
Yeah, that's amazing. What's been going on with your gambling, Nick? I know you've been very busy. You've been firing away. Finding any success at Saratoga?
I had a better week last week than I'd had the first few, so actually got back into the black, which is always good. Yeah, hit few pick fives and got well on the Hall of Fame on Friday, and I did poorly in the contest on Saturday. That had a lot to do with just trying to get alive to Nick's Go with the wrong horses, and my whole plan was to try and get to like 8 to 10,000 and bet it all to win on Nick's Go. And I didn't. I didn't get to the 8 or 10,000. Got to enough to bet some doubles, and would have been okay if one of those doubles came in. But where the winner ended up, I don't think I would have ever gotten to that level. So yeah, hanging in there. I mean, I've totally convinced myself that I'm not going to go hog wild and find myself way in the hole in this meet like I have going into Travers Week in the past, and tried to rally from there because it happens occasionally, but it more often than not doesn't. So I'm going to be a little more prudent along the way.
I didn't prep you guys to recap it all from last weekend, but it feels like it would be a shame not to. Certainly need to touch on the performance of Nick's Go. There was a lot of interesting back and forth going into last weekend. If Lasix had something to do with the in and out type performances, or my hypothesis was more having to do with the 1-turn mile versus the 2-turn mile. But I, on another show, ended up quoting Dennis Green and saying he is who we thought he was earlier in the year. I was super impressed. The way he finished up seems to me like he should be vaulting up the list of anti-post contenders for the Breeders' Cup Classic. Do you see any flaws in this horse going forward, Nick? Do you expect to see more of same, or might there be some value in standing against? What do you think of Nick's Go's prospects the rest of the year?
I mean, he looks bulletproof in so many ways. I think there's been some chatter now that he's won the Whitney so impressively about maybe somebody trying a rabbit in the future. Steve Bick actually mentioned to me this morning on the show that Scott Blasi told him, maybe we could try a rabbit. Silver State is going to need more than a rabbit to beat Nick's Go at 1.25 miles. Just that's not his real comfort zone. But he's very, very good. And I think what put everybody on notice after Saturday was that we've seen him just regularly click off fast fractions and stay on with it, whether it's, 1 1/8, a mile, 2 turns, so on and so forth. But never before had he really put up fast fractions. The field had sort of allowed him to do so. And they treated him early on like he was just going to be a runoff that was going to come back to them. And he then throttled down and had another gear. Mm-hmm. So he's a very good, very sort of old-fashioned throwback type speed horse, and I'll go on the same rant I did with Steve, which is that all of this stuff about imagine how Ben Colebrook feels, and I wonder what he thinks when he watches, and what Ben Colebrook feels is that he had a Grade 1 winning 2-year-old that, let's not mince words, he did a horrible job with as a 3-year-old. He put the horse in a series of bad spots. He completely lost his confidence. He had him sprinting. He had him long. He tried everything but going long on the turf. And I think there was no opportunity for this horse to do what he's really good at. And it took Cox's barn virtually no time to figure out, hey, you know what? This horse is really fast. And when he's allowed to show his speed and go on with it, he's really good. And that's helped him get to this next level.
It's been extremely impressive. On the stuff you're looking at, Matt, how good does he look for the Classic? He is the current anti-post favorite at 6-1.
I think he looks very good. I think what Nick said about is pretty much like any athlete. It's just you find what you're good at and you highlight the hell out of it. You know what I mean? You try to do what you do best, and if you lose at what you do best, then that's okay. That there's nothing wrong with that. And I just think Nick's Go has found what exactly is going to be successful. And you can tell that race, to me anyway, the race was over at the first turn. They just let him go and, did what I thought he was going to do. And that horse gets to open air, turns into a different animal. And I just think you might see that in the Classic.
It's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out. One of horse players' favorite things to complain about, and I'm in this camp as well, is the typical riding style, riding aggressiveness or lack thereof that we see in turf races in this country. Cone Lima in the Saratoga Oaks certainly took advantage of that, meeting out some pretty easy fractions and getting the job done. Am I nuts? I can't wait to bet Plum Ali in the right spot. I just feel like it's time after time we're seeing her stuck behind these paces. And I think the day is going to come where she gets the pace she needs and is hopefully going to be a situation where we can maybe at this point get double figure odds, because I feel like her ability isn't reflected by her running lines. Or am I just chasing rainbows, hoping for a unicorn to appear in the front yard, that we're ever going to see an honest pace in a race that Plum Ali runs in? What do you think, Nick?
I think you're definitely on the right track. I think one of the things with Plum Ali is I think she's actually a little bit better closer to a mile and a 16th, even a mile and an eighth potentially. I think it allows for her run, which, is somewhat compact, to really be used most effectively. But I'll tell you that from here, looking forward, if she somehow got to a race like the QE2 and it had some pace in it, I'd be on board. And I think she's virtually guaranteed to get some pace with a horse like Con Lima in the mix. But Con Lima is going to have to get pushed a little bit. And this was particularly frustrating because, there were two Europeans in this race that had regularly shown speed, including Chad Brown's import for Peter Brandt, who basically wired the field in her last start. And, Irad just couldn't rate her enough in the opening couple of furlongs. And then you put a Euro filly 3 wide pulling at a mile and 3/16. She has absolutely no chance.
No chance.
So she completely shut down at the quarter pole, which was not terribly shocking. And I know the horse that Mike Smith was riding had a bit of a tough trip, but it was just very frustrating because I thought it was very coy of Flavian Pratt when he was asked by Maggie Wolfendale after the race, well, Flavian, are you looking at the racing form and, figuring out that nobody really shows any speed around here and you're taking advantage of it? And he's like, no, I haven't really thought of that.
He wouldn't be a very good poker player.
Exactly, right.
He's trying very hard not to say what's obvious.
Exactly. It's like, we all know exactly what you're doing, buddy, and you're doing a really good job of it. So, don't be self-effacing whatsoever. So, I thought that was kind of ironic. Look, he's just come in and done exceptionally well on the turf, and obviously has found that, the lead is there for the taking so often, and when you get it, good things happen.
I want to talk about some of the other stuff we saw over the weekend. I should have prepped you guys that we were going to do a recap. I was so ready to dive into the pick six, but then when I have the opportunity to ask you these questions, we would have talked about off air anyway. I can't resist. Curious to get your thoughts on Stellar Tap, the impressive looking Tap It baby out of a Medaglia d'Oro dam. Won the nice maiden special weight on Saturday with a 78 speed figure, and looks like one who's just bound to do better with more ground. Seemed like the first horse that leapt to my mind of the ones we've seen on the East Coast anyway, that might be able to give Witt a little bit of trouble going forward. Was curious. We'll go back to you on this one, Matt. Is this a winner you were able to find, and do you think there's going to be a lot more to come from this horse?
I think there's a lot more to come for this horse. It's one of those, you don't want to get sucked into the eye test all the time, but one that was very, very visually impressive. And I'm just looking forward to seeing the next start. You had to go deep to find it, but, again, when you see a race like that, it's just, you see a horse that performed well, a horse that's just going to get better. And I agree with you, Pete. I think it's more good things to come.
Nick, any thoughts on any of this race or any of the 2-year-olds we've seen recently out there at Saratoga?
Yeah, I think we kind of saw the best 2-year-old performance from any horse on opening day with Echo Zulu, but I certainly thought that Stellar Tap was outstanding, and it's going to be very interesting to see if he can continue to perform at a high level. I'm not as convinced as many people that Witt is this future superstar. He's obviously a very nice 2-year-old. He feels like a horse that there could be somebody in the pack that catches up to him, pretty quickly. But that being said, we've gone almost the entire meet without seeing anything tremendously impressive from anyone, save maybe Stellar Tap, who, granted did only get a 78 buyer. I think that one of the things, and in my days making speed figures, one of the things that I reminded myself of pretty frequently is that 7/8 for 2-year-olds, especially first-time starters, is very difficult. And it's a trip that they're likely to get a little tired at. And so I would really give him a look as a horse that's going to improve down the line, especially given the amount of speed that he showed. He really buried Brigadier General, who had at least looked like a pretty decent racehorse based on his debut at Churchill. So I thought it was. I was actually going to look and see if Timeform US had this as a fast pace. It felt like it should have been. Oh yeah, red, red, red. So yeah, I mean, and if you look at the chart for this race, I mean, the second, third, and fourth place finishers are eighth, sixth, and fourth at the pace call. So I mean, he just completely crushed everybody pace wise. He got a 108 time form US figure, which I think is a far better indicator of how he ran. So I'm looking forward to it. I hope they go to the hopeful, and I think this is a really, really interesting looking horse.
I agree. This is a case where that pace included figure is much more reflective of the ability than the raw time figure that Bayer hung on it. Just differences in method. Not looking to knock anybody, just differences in methodology, and sometimes one's going to be more reflective than the other. We'll see how that all plays out. Quick word on the Saratoga Derby Invitational before we get out of here. State of rest for Joseph O'Brien, showing that the dad isn't the only one in the family that can come over here and pluck valuable prizes. Congrats to Joseph and the team. That includes our buddy Kevin Blake, who does some advising in terms of the spots. I had some questions going in how the distance was going to suit this son of Star Spangled Banner, but it's proof once again, and I don't think about this enough. I feel like horses, if you can confidently get a mile in Europe, you can get a mile and a quarter in the USA with turns, very typically. I mean, I remember having those doubts about, this is going way, way back, jumping in the way back machine, but the Poly Breeders' Cup Classic, where, I was trying to, Euros had superior form, and I was trying to crab them there. They're better in a mile. They're better in a mile. The difference in configuration, just the difference in stamina, the difference in class that a lot of these European runners have, they can get farther than you might think on the face of it. Nick, you have anything to add about the Saratoga Derby? Any horses you're looking to back coming out of this one?
No, I think the sentiment you just offered really is very accurate, and I kind of was dismissive of State of Rest as well, thinking, he's a Star Spangled Banner. He's probably better a little bit shorter. And yeah, I mean, if you can go a mile in Europe, you can go a mile and a quarter here very easily. He was also ridden with a great amount of confidence, which, you always like to see regardless of the level. And I don't think the bait was taken when the pace ended up as quick as it did. The pace ended up as quick as it did because there were guys who actually tried to show speed. Of course, they're from across the pond. So it was a little surprising. We had to import somebody if there was going to be pace, right? It wasn't going to be anybody domestic. But John Velasquez could be, he could be 3% at a meet, and the guy's not going to lose, really lose track of how, he's one of the best riders of all time, and he gave this horse a tremendous ride. I thought Soldier Rising actually got a great ride too, coming up the rail. I've not been a big fan of his, but Du Jour actually ran very well, and he was never really that far off the pace. He's a horse that's sort of easy to hate given the Baffert situation and the fact that he's now spending time with Bill Mott. Bolshoi Ballet actually ran very well. Also, it just doesn't look to me like a race that's going to be a key type of situation for anything meaningful moving forward. And I would imagine this race is probably on the chopping block for a purse decrease with some of the changes in the racing department in New York, because the horses don't ship over from Europe for purse money. They don't run for any purse money at home.
Right. I mean, it's the $1 million does seem a little outsized potentially for this one. I guess the clock was right. When I saw the 21 and change for Bolshoi, I was thinking, like, how can that possibly be? But I mean, Ryan Moore, not unlike what we were doing earlier in the show in that post race interview after the Belmont Derby, did express, I'm just going to say, surprise at how passive his fellow riders were. And you got the impression he was going to take the bull by the horns. And that makes sense, because to me, this horse, Bolshoi Ballet, he's not really suited to American racing. He's a real grindy sort. And I loved the idea tactically to send him out to the lead. But I just think it ended up, now I don't have the time form coding in front of me, but I think he just ended up running inefficiently, and it just took all the sting out of his finish. I mean, if he could just click off 12s, I mean, maybe they can try again, but he doesn't look like the best turn runner, and he doesn't have the speed really to be used to his best effect coming from off the pace with the short stretches we have here. It just seems like a horse that's going to my mind, probably be better served by a more galloping configuration. Maybe Woodbine would suit him a little bit better. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do with Bolshoi Ballet, a horse that there were reasons to question going into the race on Saturday. I didn't even list him in the top 3 in my picks, but I ended up kind of coming around to him with the idea that Ryan Moore was going to wire the field. we'll have to see. We'll have to see what happens next with him. Any thoughts for you, Matt, on the Saratoga Derby or any of the other action from last weekend, or shall we pivot to this pick six?
The Saratoga Derby was a pivotal race for me in the contest, and I can tell early. I expected him to go. I expected the horse to go, but I felt like it was a hard-headed ride on Bushwood Ballet. It was like the lead or nothing, and it just got to a point where it just got pushed along too much. And you're right, it is a grindy type horse, but I just felt like it was too much, and I immediately started looking to see who was coming up from off the pace, and it was just, I felt like it was I expected some speed in the race. I didn't expect that much, and unfortunately, I couldn't find the winner in that race. But it was a confusing race the way it was run. But it was a good result for some people, because I tell you, the double pays and the pick threes did not represent the price of that horse in the end.
I think that a lot of people took the advice that Duke Matisse gave out on the show we did over at the track on Saturday, which was simply don't use all the euros, was basically the advice. And I think we've come to a point in a lot of these situations where you might see a longer price euro inefficiently short in the multi-race bets because people are just using the horse by rote because it's coming from Europe and it's turf form shipping west. Do you buy that hypothesis, Nick? And then we'll talk about this pick six.
Yes, I think that's a totally fair sentiment. I think there's a lot, especially when the angle we've always discussed is sort of the other euro, and he was kind of the other euro. So yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for that. And the name O'Brien is always going to have some cachet over here, and I think now people are realizing that Joseph may actually be more proficient when it comes to shipping the right horses over than his dad, because Thundering Knights, was head away from winning the New York, and Iridessa a couple of years ago, now State of Rest. He's a guy that knows how to win races over here. It's
been impressive, and they're doing a good job. There is a real skill set to finding the right horses that are going to be matched by the USA. We saw that succession of years where a lot of the Aiden horses, they just couldn't get out of the gate, and he had a poor record for several years. Obviously, his form has gone back in the right direction in terms of having some recent winners. But yeah, interesting stuff to follow. Okay, let's talk about this pick six, gentlemen. It starts off in race number 5, 3:21 Eastern is the scheduled post time on Wednesday. We kick off with a 3-and-up New York maiden going 1 mile and an eighth on the dirt. Nick Tamaro, let's start with you. How are we going to get this candle lit?
It looks like this is relatively simple. You're just supposed to use Tivoli Twirl and Blitz to win, in my opinion. Tivoli Twirl looks like the inside speed and has actually run 2 improved races since joining John Terranova's care. Rosario's back on. This horse ran into American Revolution 2 starts back, who came back and won the New York Derby for Todd Pletcher. And, he's going to protect that inside post. I've always felt like speed going 1 mile and an eighth at Saratoga is a massive advantage. Blitz to win runs like a horse who wants more ground. Although his 1 mile race at Gulfstream isn't necessarily indicative of that. I think he was probably ridden a little too aggressively after getting bumped at the start. The problem with Blitz to win is that he's kind of collecting excuses. And, you generally don't get any value on these kinds of horses, especially for these connections at Saratoga. But it's supposed to be one of those two, in my opinion, as main horses. I'm going to use them both as A's. I'm going to back up with Lucky Brody, and I'll just sort of go from there. I can't see Caden being ready on debut at 1 mile and an eighth, and the other 3, to me, just look like they don't really offer tremendous appeal.
So the 1 and the 4 on the A line for Nick, with the 6 as a backup. Matt, how do you see it?
Yeah, I see it here same way. 4-1 is A's for me. Both stretching out for the first time. Speed is where you want to be with these mile and eighth races on the dirt. I think either one of these horses are going to be tough to beat. I do lean towards the 1 Tivoli Twirl a little bit more in this case. Just as Nick said, I think Blitz to win is kind of racking up the excuses. I definitely concur with that. But I actually will back up with a lone B with the 3. I think you're right, Nick. I think maybe not ready enough for the mile and eighth, but I think Engelhardt does well with these firsters. These 3-year-old first time starters. What is he? 15% wins with a positive 9% ROI. A horse I want to throw in there just in case, but I'm going to be very heavy 1-4 in the first leg here at the pick 6.
Let's move things on to race number 6. We've got 3 and up filly and mare maiden claimers, $30,000 level, 6 furlongs on the dirt. Matt Vagvolgi, let's keep it with you.
So I'm going to look at 2 horses in race 6 here. I'm going to look at the number 3. I think Miss Penelope Pit Stop is going to be pretty tough. As a clear early speed, I think should get out to the lead. I love that speed and fade first out. It's an angle I love. I think this horse can improve and can be really tough today out in the front end. So I expect Jose Ortiz to send this horse. The other horse that I would include here, I'm going to include the number 2, Shining Colors. I think that. I think it's a horse that can sit off the pace. So I think if anyone's going to close into it, I think it's going to be Shining Colors. Can sit again, has shown to give it up late at short prices. I get that. Had a decent run. The last 2 runs on the slop have been decent. Like seeing this horse getting back to a fast track. So I'm going to use the 3 and the 2. We'll back up with the number 4. Starship Dreams, again, second time out. I thought that was a good effort first time. Is definitely going to have to step up. Just would love to see this horse on a fast track. I know that was at Finger Lakes, but would like to see this horse on a fast track. So I'd like to use that horse as well as the number 8, just a new face here on the dirt. I think can appreciate the dirt, has been running against much better on the turf. So I'm going to back up with the number 4 and 8, but my primary plays here that I'm going to stick with are the number 3 and the number 2 as A's.
Nick, how do you see this one?
Yeah, I thought the Miss Penelope Pit Stop looked awfully tough. I thought the debut effort was solid enough. Blinkers were going on, and Rudy Rodriguez's barn feels like it's in the midst of heating up quite a bit after a productive weekend. So I was going to use her as an A. I'm also going to use Bonkers as an A, cutting back in distance, relatively close to a hot pace at 1 1/8 last time. This is a horse whose dirt form last year for Arnaud Delacour is actually plenty good enough to win this race, and Mike Maker's clearly having a phenomenal meet. So no, don't have to go into too much detail on that. So I was going to use the 3 and 5 as A's, back up with the 2, 4, and 8. I agree with Shining Colors being an interesting horse, having kind of inside speed and an aggressive jockey. And Juan Vasquez, though he has had limited success in New York overall, actually had a couple of horses run pretty well the first 10 days or so of the meet. So I think there's a little bit to like there. And this one might be working pretty strongly down at Belmont. We'll have to take a look at the workout report and see if that's the case. So that was my thought.
Race 7 is a 3-year-old fillies allowance race going 1 1/8 on the inner turf. Nick Tamaro, who's your idea of the winner?
You know, my top pick is going to be the 11 Town Avenger, who I thought ran a really credible race in the Tepin. There was little pace in there, and one of the reasons why I kind of liked Toby's Heart in the Lake George a few weeks ago was that nobody came from off the pace. And Town Avenger, I think, is a pretty good example of that. She made a nice late move. I think that it's interesting that Lynch is now looking for more ground, and this is a horse that he immediately clearly wanted to step up and trip after the positive debut performance. So I thought she was very interesting. I don't have a particularly great opinion. I'm going to use the 1, 4, 9, 11 as A's. I think Miss Delicious is actually very, very dangerous from the inside. The rail is at 0 now on the inner turf for at least this week, in part because the 4-star Dave is Saturday. And, you know, one thing we see on a pretty regular basis is that the inside gets very favorable when the rail comes down. And so I think Miss Delicious is going to get a very good trip. I'm hopeful that Johnny is a little bit more decisive coming out of the gate and that he really wants to go. She's clearly at her best when she's on the lead. And I don't think the trip is beyond her scope if she does get a bit of a pace edge. I thought Earth Strike was compromised by the pace last time out. Part of the reason why Third Drift was likable coming out of there. And I think she'll run a little bit better. I think the extra ground does her some good. And Community Adjusted is a horse that ran a credible race in her first try against Winners. I'm not sure how strongly I feel about that race overall, but she seems like the gradually improving type that really is ideally suited to around a 9 furlong trip.
So 11, 1, 4, 9 for Nick on the A line. Were you going to use any backups in here?
You know, I'll probably use the 2 because I don't want to be beaten by that horse. And I'll find a way to use the 12 as well, who I thought ran a couple of decent races at Churchill.
A spready approach for Nick in
very
race number
overly
7.
Spready. Hopefully not.
What do you think, Matt? How are you going to get through this? Like,
I feel the same. Tough. I think this is a tough race. I think this is a race where you can potentially get some value. Similar to Nick, I'm going to use the 9, the 7, and the 11 as my A's. The 11 will also be my top pick, Town Avenger. Really for all the reasons that Nick said. I guess the one horse that I would add in on the A line is going to be LS Forte. I thought, closed in the slow fractions the last two times out. I thought those two races especially the last race at Churchill, was pretty slow and made up some nice ground to get that win. So I think a repeat of that effort could be very difficult here. I do think the 11 Town Avenger is going to get first jump at the early pace. And again, I agree with Nick on the front end. I'm just not going to get beat by the two, how do you say that, Magisterium on the front end. I just think that horse can wheel out to the front end with Saez and not be caught. But I do think that the 9-7 or the 11 to me are going to be the top horses. But you can go a lot of different directions here. I think you can get some value in this race.
Race number 8, 3 and up, filly and mare, New York bred allowance types, going 7 on the dirt. We've just got a 7-runner field. Matt, are we going to try to narrow down a bit in this one, or another place where you might have a few numbers to share?
Yeah, I think this is another. Difficult race. I'm going to use the 4, 6, and 2 as A's in this race. The 4, Trini Luck, and the 6, Honey Money. I would say Honey Money is probably my top play here. I just like Jose Ortiz showing some initiative on the front end. Is tactical, can get out of the gate and go gate to wire, can sit off the pace. So I think it'd be a little tactical out of the gate, going 7 furlongs, which is always nice. So I do like the 6 as well as the 4. Again, I think you're going to see speed out of the 4 as well. Same thing, can get to the front and be home. Again, gets back to a fast track, which this horse has competed well. I am going to back up with the 3 Diva Banker, which I'm not thrilled with, but again, I think this horse off the pace, sitting behind that early potential speed duel, could be the one that gets the best in this race if the pace does heat up front. One horse I guess I was playing around with, I'm not sure. I have on the B line with a question mark, is the 5, My Roxy Girl. For the same reasons, I think has the best late pace figure for my numbers here. And again, if it does get hot up front, I think this horse will be heard from late. So, for me, the 4 and the 6 are going to be my top plays. The 6, Honey Money, is going to be the top play for me. And, Jose Ortiz, 30% wins in allowance races on dirt sprints. So certainly a big number. So those are my A's, 4, 6, 2, with them back up with 3 and 5.
All right, good stuff. The 6 being the top pick overall. Nick Tamero, where are you in this spot?
Yeah, I kind of felt like this was a race where the horses that have regularly run in 2 other thens actually were inferior to the ones that have just won their 1 other than, maybe save Betsy Blue. Betsy Blue looks like the horse to beat on paper. I think she was compromised enough by a slow pace last time out on a sloppy track. Of course, she's been at her best on wet surfaces, but I think there's plenty to like there, and she seems like an obvious horse to use as an A. I was actually going to use the 2, 3, and 4 as A's and back up with the 5 and 6, because I feel like Honey Money will probably be pushed to some extent by either Diva Banker or Trini Luck, and I think the one that doesn't show speed will probably have a bit of an advantage, as well as Betsy Blue, because there should be a little bit of pace in front of her. But I was scared by pretty much all of the 2 through 6. I think that any of that group of 5 horses could win. There's actually a slight argument that could be made for a Willoway at a gigantic price, because she did not get a particularly great trip last time. But Jalen Samuel is actually a much better rider than Hemin Harkey, contrary to what you'd think by his 2 for 107 record. But it's going to take a lot. That's a horse that maybe if you had the budgetary capability, you'd use as a C or something like that. But yeah, I really felt like Diva Banker is a horse that's taken a huge step forward for Ray Handel. We've seen Ray Handel do well with horses that he's gotten into form, and she showed a new dimension last time, coming from a little bit off of it. Trini Luck is very fast, set a hot pace last time and went on with it. Honey Money is a horse that's in good form. So it seemed to me like a race where really, very easily any 5 horses, any group of that 5 could win.
I like the sound of it, though, from a betting point of view. I don't like the sound of having to use 5, maybe 6 in a 7-horse field, but that's the way it shakes out. And if there's strong enough opinions elsewhere and the tickets can work, that's the way to make it go. Let's talk about our featured race of the day. We've got 3-year-olds going 5.5 on the Terps the Terps. I don't know what happened to my mouth words there. I'll leave that mistake in. It's the Mahoney Stakes and Nick Tamaro. I'm eager to get your thoughts on it.
Would it have only been appropriate if this race was sponsored by Maker's Mark, the way you introduced it, or something of the sort? But I kid, of course. This is a tough race. I'm actually interested to hear what Matt has to say about it as well. I kind of felt like the main horses that I wanted were Into the Sunrise and Jackson Traveler. I know that's pretty simplistic. I mean, those are likely the two favorites. I thought the Jackson Traveler maybe was taken a little bit out of his game by having to chase Golden Pal so aggressively early, and that it might really benefit him to be a little bit more conservatively ridden in a race where there was going to be more pace. So they were my A's. I'm a little torn on what to do with Arrest Me Red. I actually think he's interesting because this is a horse who showed some real ability as a 2-year-old. I know it came in it for a different barn across the country, but he beat What Makes Sammy Run in that Atlantic Beach back in November at Aqueduct. And What Makes Sammy Run has turned into a really nice turf horse for Mark Glatt, and actually broke his maiden by 8+ lengths for George Weaver prior to that race. So this is a horse that, joining Wesley Ward's care, coming off the layoff, seemingly working really well. I'm probably talking myself into using him a little bit more prominently because he looks to me to be very interesting, though I will say the 1 and 4 were the ones I fancied a little bit more.
Makes sense. And I like the idea of not being afraid of going with the obvious things in turf sprints. I think sometimes people make them more complicated than they are. I have to say, this is a lesson I feel like I've learned from Jonathan over the years, that there's plenty of times where if you get the horse who you think is going to be on the early lead, and you get the horse with the best numbers overall, it counts in turf sprints, despite their chaotic reputation, as a pretty efficient way to get through a number of races at this level. With that in mind, I was having a long look at the 7 Momos, curious to hear what Matt thinks of that one, and then I might send that back to you just to make that horse gets a shout as one that I think will go very close to the lead early on, though obviously does have Into the Sunrise to contend with as well. But Matt, who are your numbers in the feature?
I'm the same. I'm 1-4 as A's, and this is like a top A line for me in terms of the sequence. So I would say like 90% of my tickets are going to go through the 1 Into the Sunrise and the 4 Jackson Traveler. Just as Nick said, I just think this horse can go from the inside and be gone. And the tricky thing is on these turf sprints is you're pot committed, right? When you got the speed on the inside, if you get pressured, you're in trouble. And I think to the horse you just mentioned, Momos at the number 7, I think can pressure the 1 and could be in a precarious spot. And I think that sets it up perfectly for Jackson Traveler. So on a pace perspective, on both ways, getting out and just rattling off front end speed, I think Into the Sunrise could be gone. If Momos does pressure Into the Sunrise, I think you see Jackson Traveler as setting up for the perfect trip. So that's my reasoning for playing very heavily the 1 and the 4 here. I will back up with the very lightly, but I will back up with Momos as well as Arrest Me Red. I just think Arrest Me Red might have too much to do here, but I think again, if it gets really hot up front, could be a horse that rolls late. But like I said, primarily my plays are going to go through the 1 and the 4 in this sequence here.
What do we think the running style is going to be on Arrest Me Red? In the Ward program, Nick, do you think we're going to see more speed than we've ever seen before from this runner?
I think so. Yeah, I think you're going to see him a little more forwardly placed. I think the jockey choice makes it relatively clear that they're going to. Johnny's a guy that you want kind of in that outside stalking trip, and this feels like a horse who's supposed to be a little bit more forward. And so yeah, that's kind of what I'm looking at.
I think it makes sense, and I think it's interesting. But I do like the idea of getting kind of heavily into the Sunrise and Jackson Traveler for race design reasons. I get the idea that it's probably pretty darn likely to go through those 2. And if you're playing on a budget, that might be all that you do. But I like that you guys have some ideas on the backups as well. Let's talk about the pay leg. 3 and up, New York bred, maiden claiming 40s, 1 1/16 on the inner turf. Nick Tamaro, how are we going to get paid?
Well, I'll tell you this much. I got beat by Danzig with the Stars on opening day for a lot less than he beat Matt Ford on Sunday. And I st- and
hope
I
so.
st- have I have absolutely no idea how that horse has won 2 races in a row. I mean, it is like one of life's great mysteries. And it's kind of funny. I looked at the overnight the other day and I saw Clever Fellow in here, and I thought to myself, well, obviously Chad's looking to win as many races as possible, and then Ruse breaks his maiden on Saturday, and Dancing with the Stars wins on Sunday. And I thought to myself, I don't think he's going to scratch the horse, because I don't really think he has anywhere to. I don't think he's capable of winning in one other than. So he just is going to let him win here. He's just a complete standout in this race. I mean, he's got a little bit of a look of a loser to him and a little bit of a smell, but those are maiden special weight races. This is a 40 maiden claimer where Viking Zim is the only horse that looks like he can be competitive on paper, and he just gives up such an enormous advantage to Clever Fellow with his running style. So I'm going to keep it simple, and I'm going to loan a Clever Fellow. I'm sort of building my ticket based on this being a pick 5 with a sixth leg, and I might have a one backup or so with Viking Zim, but otherwise I'm not gonna bother much, because this looks like one where it's just a little too simple.
Over the years, I definitely agree with the idea that the theoretical proven losers, they're much more likely, that doesn't always happen, but they're much more likely to run to their numbers, to me, when they're facing a new low level. So in other words, the horse that the 0 for 6 and, the same horse, Clever Fellow, if it's the same class level, I'm tempted to start worrying that maybe there's a character flaw. But on the drop, I feel like you're supposed to include these horses, and it's absolutely okay to key around them, even at a short price with those questions. I put the numbers first in these instances. Matt, how much of your ticket do you see running through Clever Fellow?
Pretty much all of it. The fact that I have to mention this horse again, Dancing with the Stars, I'm going to have to, just rubbing it right in my face. It's so tough to get around this horse. Now, it is, like Nick mentioned, it's a horse I try to beat all the time. And I was chatting with a friend this morning about it. He's like, I don't get it. It's like, this is a horse you're always trying to beat. I just don't see anything else in here. And again, you look at that race, the last race, Dancing with the Stars with Ruse. Again, I think this horse just completely lays over this field. I think you're going to have a runaway pace setter in the 2 Spiritual King. The 12 Cox Ledge might show some early speed, and if that's the case, it just helps the situation for Clever Fellow. So I just think lopes along, saves ground, and just pounces in the stretch. Just about every ticket is going to go through this horse. I don't see much else in here. The only other ones I can think of here, the Viking Zim, I guess, would have to run a huge race to make that happen. Flincher's Rock, if you want to give a shot to that horse, to that colt, but I don't see it. And Chad is heating up. It seemed like people were trying to leave him for dead. Well, he's alive, and he's very much alive. And these second time around Saratoga starters on the turf are just doing so well, and I just can't get around him. So Clever Fellow is going to be an A+ on the line, meaning 95% of my tickets are going through it. So it's like Nick mentioned, it's like a pick 5 to me, where I'm going to try to get paid on this favorite.
Worth, for the purposes of the picks we sent around to In the Money Plus subscribers, mentioning the 10 and the 5 as C's, or would you rather just have your recorded opinion be stone cold to the 4?
Yeah, in terms of how I play it, I don't use the C line often, only when I'm going to use all of my A's into that. So if I'm 100% correct, I will have the 5 and the 10 as like a C line, but it'll be a base wager, those 2 horses to all of my A's. But that's where I think the middle legs get a little complicated, but I think you can try to mess around and get a price and try to get live to the 4. It does 2 things. I get alive here if I'm alive for a decent score where I got some price. I'm gonna let that roll, or I can use it as a floor, so to speak, almost like a put in an investment where I can look elsewhere to try to generate value around it and know I'm going to get paid on this favorite. So, I'm going to use the 5 and the 10, maybe 1 or 2 tickets live to all my A's, and but the 4 Clever Fellow is going to be the one.
Reminds me, we have to do that show soon where we do the deeper dive in ticket building with you, 2 of the sharper ticket builders I know on the show today, in Matt Vagvolgi and Nick Tamaro. Nick, you have a closing thought about this 6 or this pick 6 or anything else in racing on your mind before we move on to the next segment of the show?
No, that's it for me. I'm looking forward to the sequence. I think the more we talk about it, the more I think it's actually pretty playable and one worthy of our time.
Good stuff. All right, guys, the show will be back right after these messages. We want to thank a couple of local partners at this point in the show, Walt and Whitman Brewing Company and Cafe. Been hanging out there a bunch and absolutely loving it. The beer is showing well and the coffee is delicious. Great place to sit and hang out in the morning and handicap or have a few drinks in the afternoon. Check them out, Walt and Whitman Brewing. Also, our friends at the Brentwood. If you're in the mood for a quiet cocktail in a bucolic environment, go over to the Brentwood. Great stuff over there. They still have a few rooms available. If you're looking for a boutique hotel to stay in, you can contact the Brentwood Hotel if you're looking for that type of thing. And you can come see us on Saturdays, every Saturday at 10:30. Travelers may differ. We're doing a live show there. We've got terrific guests. We handicap a little. We talk about the state of racing, and we're having a ton of fun. You are invited to join us for Live at the Brentwood, 10:30 on Saturday mornings. And if you can't make it, you can always listen to the podcast version as well. I also want to give some love to our partners over at Equin Edge. Our deal with them is continuing. In the Money Media listeners can get a free month, the best deal out there, of Equin Edge. It's an AI-fueled horse racing technology. I ran into several people this weekend who said they heard about Equin Edge on our show and they've been using it to cash tickets. A bunch of proprietary algorithms. You can still use your brain and sort through the form, but they make the work a lot easier. You're going to want to check this out. I'm a particular fan of the genetic strength rating, the strength of race metric that they have, cool proprietary metrics and algorithms. To sign up for your free month, you can go to their sign-up page at equinedge.com and use the promo code FREEMONEY, or you can go directly to that link, equinedge.com/free-money. Don't sleep on Equin Edge, folks. Check it out, equinedge.com. Next up on the show, very happy to have another pair of guests. Mainly, we're going to be talking about a really fun event we've got cooking. Hopefully, after we hit the pick six that Nick and Matt gave out, we can go celebrate at this charity event we're doing out on I believe that's Maple Avenue. We'll get the confirmation on the address, but out at Simply Food by Mora. It's a benefit for the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation. We've got gumbo for the horses with Michael Baychok. Really looking forward to that. You're not going to hear from him on this show. You'll be hearing from him elsewhere, Capital OTB and whatnot. But the two guests we have, first, our returning guest here to discuss what's up at the TRF. We call her the First Lady of the In the Money Players podcast. She's Kim Weir. Kim, what's up?
Hey there, Pete. I'm excited about having beer and gumbo tomorrow.
It's going to be fun. We want to see as many listeners there as possible. Anybody in the Saratoga area, whether it's for this next big week of racing or still in town for the sales, whatever it happens to be. Our other guest we're going to bring in, he has one of the most important jobs at the Gumbo for the Horses event. He's providing the beer.
Woo-hoo!
He's Kurt Borchardt from Artisanal Brew Works here in Saratoga Springs, also out there on Maple Avenue. Kurt, how are things?
Yeah, things are going well. Thanks for having me on, Pete. And hello to Kim.
All right, good stuff. We'll start with you, Kurt. Artisanal, I think folks knew you were out at the old bike factory. You've now got this new location out on Maple Avenue. How can folks find you? And is there anywhere they should be looking for the beer other than the new brewery outpost at the moment?
Yeah, so we used to be located near SPAC. Our lease expired, and we were limited by not being able to serve food. And that's in the future, that's what we want to do. So we're taking over a 10,000 square foot building, and we're going to put in a brew pub. And I'll have a humongous outside area with a really large pergola, private event space, tent. It's really going to be well done. Right now, we're in a temporary spot while we're doing the renovations. It's in the same area. So you'd be pulling in. There's a Jeep dealership on Maple Avenue. You pull in there, and there's a smaller building where our temporary location is. It does have an outdoor area, not nearly as nice as what we're going to be doing in the future space. As far as our beers, our our beers actually can be found. We're distributed in about 10 states. So from California to Connecticut, Florida, Connecticut, Rhode Island, obviously New York, Pennsylvania, a couple others that I'm forgetting at the moment. Maryland and Delaware, and locally, the beverage centers would probably be your best bet. We are in some restaurants, but we self-distribute, and draft is typically controlled more by distributors, and we just don't have the sales force to keep on beating the street and making sure that we defend a draft line. So we are in some areas, but not a ton. It's a lot of work to sell draft beer. It's a much easier to sell packaged beer. So that's probably what we do. And the best bet, if you're looking for Artisanal Brew Works beer, is you come to our tap room, and I guarantee you that we'll have beer for you.
I love it. I love it. You're open 6 days a week, every day but Monday, opening at noon. Go to 5 o'clock on Sunday. Go to 9 Tuesday through Saturday. Kim and I were out there, enjoyed a nice flight of beer, bunch of good things. Let me ask you, what beer is going to go best with the gumbo for tomorrow night? That's what I really want to know.
So I'm given 3 different options. I think each one would go well. Personally, I would probably go with a Pilsner. We have a Birra di Capriccio Pilsner. It's brewed in collaboration with Cafe Capriccio, which is a really amazing restaurant in downtown Albany. That would probably be my choice, but certainly an IPA, I can see that pairing well with gumbo. And it's not a bitter IPA. It's more the fruit juice, hazy New England style IPA. And it's a single IPA, so you don't have to worry about driving later. It's a little lower ABV, 6.3. So I think that would be a good match. But then I was thinking today there are some people that don't like gluten, so I'm bringing over a raspberry lime seltzer, and it's all natural. It's not artificially flavored. We actually put in lime puree and raspberry puree. So it has a reddish haze to it, and the flavors are really nice. It's super enjoyable. So for the people, and it's not gluten free. I should say that, because we're a facility that uses grain that contains gluten, but so it's highly gluten reduced. Gotcha. What I could say on that.
Sounds like something that would be very refreshing on a hot summer night if for any reason you're not in the mood for the beer. And for those wondering, it's a summer version of gumbo. It's the chicken and andouille. Mike Baychok been working on this personally. Very excited about it. Kim, have you spoken to Michael? What's going on? Is he cooking on premise? Is he bringing up the base and we're going to add stock? Like how is the magic happening over there? And give folks some details about where they can get their tickets and when they can join us.
Well, yes. Well, it's so funny you ask, have I seen him? Well, it's Saratoga in the summer, so all you do is you sort of drive or walk somewhere and you run into people. So I just literally ran into Michael, and I was on my way home from Simply Food by Mara, where we'd been working out the setup. So we were all in on gumbo today. And so I did see Michael. He is in town. He is a little dismayed that the Louisiana heat followed him here. He thought he was coming to upstate New York where it was cooler. But he's in town. And here's the thing. He has brought the base, the roux, with him, and he was on his way. As I saw him, he was walking home, probably from watching the horses, and he was going to be taking the roux out to Mara's. So he brought it from Louisiana, but then tomorrow, the final steps of assembly with the andouille and the chicken and the rice and all the other good stuff, that's all happening on premise in the kitchen of Simply Food by Mara. So she's been collaborating with him and the chef Frank from Bridgeton's restaurant. They've all been talking. We've all just been getting so darn excited about it, and they are ready. He is ready, and Mara's ready, and we have a beautiful. It's really going to feel like we're having a party in our backyard, Pete. It's just not your house or mine.
That sounds pleasant.
Yeah, Mara's got just a great little spot. So I will dive into like the where it is. It's really easy to get there, folks. It is right I guess that's north on Route 9, which is both Route 9 and Maple Avenue. It's just on the way to the Wishing Well or on the way to Nove, which are two places many people know, but they will stop referring to it that way. They will say, oh, it's the place where Artisanal is and Simply Food by Mora is.
Exactly.
I love it.
And they're basically across the street from each other. That's the fun thing. I told Kurt once he was telling us about this great beer he was going to provide and the seltzer. I said, and the great thing is we're going to get this many cases for this many people. But honestly, if we run out, we can just, we're just a hop, skip, and a jump, and we'll go buy more. We'll go get more.
That's beautiful.
So it's really easy to get to. It is on the right-hand side as you're driving towards Wishing Well, and it's just a straight shot from the track. And
what time are we kicking off, and where can people get tickets?
Yep. So we kick off at 6:00. We know that folks need to hang out and watch that. There's a TV at Morris, by the way, but 6:00. We'll start 6 to 8. Get there when you can. We're selling tickets like left and right, but we will keep taking tickets at the door. We're preparing for 100 servings of gumbo. So, be prepared for that. And to buy tickets is super easy as always. With our friends from the In the Money Players podcast, you just go to their special link, which is trfinc.org/players. Always for all the good stuff, go there and you can buy your tickets that way. That's the plan.
Good stuff. And what's the in advance price is $25, and that gets you gumbo and a beer?
That's exactly right. Gumbo and a beer. And if you come on the spot and you haven't bought your ticket yet, we're going to charge you $35.
Okay. Well, that's fair enough. And then if we do happen to wrap at 8, we do have Artisanal open for another hour for post game, or I'm considering going there ahead of time, pre-gaming, tasting a couple of the other styles, and just watching the Pick Six play out on the phone and being at the event nice and early. So that should be a lot of fun. While I have you, Kim, I just want a little update on what's been going on. I know you've been extremely busy this summer, TRF, having some other successful events. Obviously, this is the focus now, but if you want to give us a little bit of a recap of how things have been going, I know you've been very active.
Well, we are just really grateful, Pete, because what has been happening is folks like you and Kurt and Michael and Mara have been saying, hey, can we do this? Can we be helpful? And we just say yes and thank you. So that's been keeping me pretty busy this summer. We did just come off of a truly amazing event on Sunday night that was exactly this sort of thing, where our amazing board member, Anita Motion, said, hey, how about if we try this? Well, Just Try This was 100 bottles of tequila donated by Casamigos, a Delphi hotel providing a crazy beautiful venue, Bobby Flay designing some appetizers, all of it provided so that we could raise money for both the TRF and the PDJF. And it was an amazing event. It was called For Jocks and Horses, and it was crazy. We had 200 plus people under the tent, and so much fun. And so I just can't say enough gratitude for that. That was huge fun. I have a feeling that may have just become a thing that we're going to do.
Love it.
In the future. So there's that. And then there was this amazing mini golf thing that happened with Anthony Stabile and Andy Serling and incredible friends, including many anonymous people. Sorry, friends. That is so annoying. Sorry, Pete. It's that kind of time of year. Anyway, that was amazing. And that was an extraordinary thing where 4 charities received extraordinary gifts thanks to Anthony and Andy. But I will finish by saying that believe it or not, our biggest is yet to come, and that is our TRF barbecue at the barn on August 24th at the Saratoga Winery. We will be following all evolving guidelines, but it's predominantly an outdoor event. We expect upwards of 300 to 350 people there, and it's going to be so much fun. Pete, your sponsorship is very appreciated, as are our friends from America's Pastime Stables, Saratoga Stables. The list is long and wonderful, but I mostly want to thank you, Pete, because you are always there making it happen. And it's going to be a super fun party on August 24th. Buy your tickets now, because I'm putting my numbers soon.
Same link, right? You can get them from the trfinc.org/players link.
You can. You always can.
And we'll have Jason Brinkman from America's Pastime on next week to talk about that. Before I let you guys get out of here, I want to go back to Kurt. I got a couple questions for him. When I learned that your business partner's name was Colin Quinn, I got excited because he's another Brooklyn guy, and I was a huge fan of Remote Control back in the day, as well as his more recent work. Then I realized it was not the same Colin Quinn, and this was a Colin Quinn who has an extensive background teaching French. I know that you have a lot of experience teaching as well, and I was just curious to ask you how a couple of teachers got involved in the brewing business.
So we both had brewed for a while before we met. I was a chemical engineer for about 13 years in the area here. And then I became, I wanted to become a teacher, so I did that. And then my first year teaching at Saratoga Springs High School, I met Colin. And at that point, I've been brewing for probably a dozen years, maybe 8 years at that point. And, obviously we both have a passion for beer. And so anytime there was teacher parties or any events, we'd be just talking about what we were brewing, and we'd share the brews and then start brewing together. And then it just kind of evolved from there. There was that building that we used to be in, the old Serrata Bike Factory, that became available, and I looked at it as a great opportunity to put a brew pub in. At that point there was just Druthers, and they're great. I felt that Saratoga had room for another brewery, and so we went for it.
That's awesome.
And the rest is history.
We love stories like that around here of turning avocation into vocation. It's what's happened with me and horse racing, and I think Kim has a similar narrative. So we always like to hear those stories, and I agree. I feel like brewing, like distilling, there's more of a rising tide lifts all ships approach. And I patronize Druthers, and I patronize Artisanal. And of course, we've got our partners over at Walden Whitman Brewing, whose beer we enjoyed at my party on Sunday night. I feel like by creating a scene, you create a destination, and people will come and they'll check out the breweries, and they'll go to Henry Street Tap Room, and they'll go to Pint Sized. And Saratoga really a bit of a beer epicenter for the Adirondack region. Would you say that's a fair comment?
Yes, I definitely would say that. I mean, we're thrilled to have Walt Whitman. That last year they kind of opened up right about the time the COVID hit, so it's nice that they can get a chance to not be so severely restricted and be open. They've just added to the portfolio of great craft breweries around the area. Even outside of the area, Common Roots is a really great one.
Yep.
Rare Form down south. There's just a significant. I'm skipping over a ton of breweries, and no offense to my brewing friends in the area. I really think everybody really comes to bat with some really cool styles. We all kind of have our own niche, and but we also do work together. We did a fundraiser, a couple fundraisers. One, it's COVID related for employees that were worked in the restaurant industry, and obviously weren't getting tips because there wasn't any jobs. So did fundraiser for them. There was a girl at Common Roots who unexpectedly got cancer, and so all the breweries got together and did a collaborative brew and raised money for to help her out with her treatment. So while we are competitors, at the same time we are collaborators.
Co-opetition, baby. We're fans. We're fans of that too around here. All right, we're gonna let you go. Can't wait to raise a beer with you both tomorrow night on Route 9 North, Maple Avenue, whatever you want to call it, at Simply Food by Mara, with beer provided by Artisanal Brew Works. trfinc.org/players is the place to go and get it. And that's going to do it for the show. We'll thank Matt Fagvolgi one more time. We'll thank Nick Tamaro. We'll thank Kurt Borchardt and Kim Weir. We'll thank our founding partners, including the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation and also 10 Strike Racing. We're hoping they're going to have a nice winner on Wednesday as well. Fingers crossed. We always root for the purple and black around here. This show's been a production of In the Money Media. Our business manager is Drew Coatney. Our chief creative officer is Jonathan Kinchin. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatel. May you win all your photos.
This year, the fans choose the finalists. Coming this August, for the first time ever, the fans pick the finalists in 4 2021 America's Best Racing Fan Choice Awards categories: favorite racing TV personality, racetrack food, podcast or radio show, and favorite smaller circuit racetrack. Get ready to be heard and to vote on americasbestracing.net.